Picture the Earth as it was during the last great ice age, roughly 20,000 to 40,000 years ago. Massive glaciers, some nearly 2 miles thick, covered much of North America and Europe. The sea levels were so low that land bridges connected continents that are now separated by vast oceans. The climate was harsh, unforgiving, and survival was never guaranteed. In this frozen world, two apex predators shared the same hunting grounds. Humans, still relatively new to the evolutionary stage, traveled in small bands, following the herds of mammoths, bison, and wild horses that provided their sustenance. They were intelligent, resourceful, and increasingly skilled at working together. But they were not alone in their pursuit of prey. The gray wolf, Canis lupus, was the dominant predator of the northern hemisphere. These magnificent creatures had evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to become the ultimate cooperative hunters. They lived in family groups, communicated through complex vocalizations and body language, and could bring down animals many times their size through patience, strategy, and teamwork. In many ways, wolves and humans were remarkably similar. Both species lived in social groups with complex hierarchies. Both relied on cooperation to survive. Both were intelligent enough to plan, to remember, to learn from experience. And both followed the same herds across the same vast landscapes, sometimes competing for the same kills, sometimes simply coexisting in a wary mutual awareness. Scientists have long debated exactly how the first wolves became dogs. The truth is, we may never know the precise moment or mechanism, but we can imagine how it might have happened, piecing together clues from genetics, archaeology, and our understanding of animal behavior. In any population of wolves, there is natural variation. Some wolves are bolder than others. Some are more curious. Some are slightly less fearful of unfamiliar things. Imagine a wolf pack following a group of human hunters at a distance, waiting for scraps, watching for opportunities. Most of the wolves would keep their distance, but a few, perhaps the younger ones, perhaps the more adventurous, might edge a little closer than the rest. Human camps would have been irresistible to such wolves. The smell of cooking meat, the bones and scraps left behind, the warmth of fires on cold nights. A wolf that was slightly less afraid, slightly more curious, might discover that lingering near humans brought rewards. Food was more reliable. The fire kept predators away. And the humans, for their part, might have found these wolves useful. Wolves have exceptional senses. Their hearing is far superior to ours, and their sense of smell is almost beyond human comprehension. A wolf lurking at the edge of camp would provide an early warning system, alerting to approaching danger long before human senses could detect it. Perhaps the first alliance was simply one of mutual tolerance, each species benefiting from the other's presence without any deliberate decision being made. Over generations, the wolves that were most comfortable around humans would have been the most successful. They would have had more reliable food sources, better protection, higher survival rates. They would have had more offspring, and those offspring would have inherited their parents' reduced fear of humans. Slowly, imperceptibly, a new kind of wolf was emerging. Not quite wild anymore, but not yet domestic. Something in between. Something new. To understand how wolves became dogs, we must first understand what domestication actually means. It's not simply taming. A tamed animal is a wild animal that has learned to tolerate humans. A domesticated animal is something fundamentally different. Domestication is a genetic change, passed down through generations, that makes an animal inherently suited to living with humans. In the 1950s and 60s, a Soviet scientist named Dmitry Belyaev conducted a remarkable experiment in Siberia. He wanted to understand how domestication worked, and he chose to study silver foxes. His method was simple but profound. Each generation, he selected only the foxes that showed the least fear and aggression toward humans, breeding them together while excluding the more wild-tempered individuals. The results were astonishing. Within just a few generations, the foxes began to change. They became friendlier, more eager to interact with humans, more responsive to human gestures and emotions. But here's the truly fascinating part. As their behavior changed, so did their appearance. Their ears became floppier. Their tails began to curl. Some developed spotted coats. Their muzzles became shorter, their faces more puppy-like. Belyaev had stumbled upon something profound. By selecting for tameness alone, he had inadvertently triggered a cascade of physical changes. Scientists now believe this happens because the genes that control fear and aggression are linked to genes that control development. When you select for reduced fear, you also select for a whole suite of other traits. This is called the domestication syndrome, and it appears in virtually every domesticated animal, from dogs to pigs to cattle. Something similar must have happened to those first wolves that lingered near human camps. The wolves that were less fearful, more tolerant of human presence, would have thrived. They would have reproduced more successfully, and generation by generation, almost certainly without any deliberate human intention at first, these proto-dogs would have become physically and behaviorally distinct from their wild cousins. The archaeological record shows us glimpses of this transformation. The oldest remains that scientists confidently identify as dogs, rather than wolves, date to around 15,000 years ago. These ancient dogs had shorter snouts than wolves, smaller teeth, and differently shaped skulls. But some researchers believe the process began much earlier, perhaps 30,000 or even 40,000 years ago, with the physical changes becoming pronounced only after millennia of selection. Where did this transformation take place? This is one of the great mysteries of dog domestication. For many years, scientists believed dogs were domesticated in a single location, perhaps somewhere in East Asia, or perhaps in the Middle East. But recent genetic studies have complicated this picture. Some evidence suggests dogs may have been domesticated independently in different parts of the world, or that there was a single domestication followed by complex migrations and interbreeding. What we do know is that by roughly 14,000 years ago, dogs were living alongside humans across Europe and Asia. They had become something new, something that had never existed before. An animal that was genuinely bonded to another species, not through force or captivity, but through a deep, mutual connection that benefited both partners. Perhaps the most touching evidence of this early bond comes from ancient burial sites. At a place called Bonnoberkastel in Germany, archaeologists discovered a grave dating to approximately 14,000 years ago. Inside were the remains of a man, a woman, and 2 dogs. The dogs had been carefully placed alongside the humans, treated in death as they must have been treated in life, as valued companions worthy of burial with their human family. One of these dogs was particularly significant. Analysis of its remains revealed that it had suffered from a severe case of canine distemper as a puppy. This disease would have required weeks of nursing care to survive. The virus causes fever, neurological symptoms, and often death. Yet this ancient dog had lived through it, which means some human 14,000 years ago, had cared for this sick puppy, had nursed it back to health, had loved it enough to help it survive when nature would have let it die. Think about that for a moment. 14,000 years ago, in a world without medicine or veterinary science, without any understanding of disease, a human being looked at a suffering puppy and felt compassion. They gave it food and water. They kept it warm. They watched over it day and night. And when that dog finally died years later, they buried it with the same care and reverence they showed their own dead. This is not the behavior of people who saw dogs merely as tools or possessions. This is love. Pure, unmistakable, transcending the boundaries of species and time. The bond between humans and dogs was already ancient when the pyramids were built, already deep when the first cities rose from the plains of Mesopotamia. It is woven into our very DNA, both literally and figuratively. Partnership forged in time. As you drift deeper into relaxation, consider the profound nature of what happened during those thousands of years of early domestication. 2 species, human and wolf, found each other across the vast wilderness of the prehistoric world. They learned to trust each other, to communicate, to work together. The wolves that became dogs gave up some of their wildness, but in return they gained something extraordinary. A partnership with the most successful species on Earth. And humans gained something too. They gained companions who could hear what they could not hear, smell what they could not smell. They gained helpers in the hunt, guardians in the night, friends in the lonely stretches of time between the great events of life. They gained creatures who asked for nothing more than food, shelter, and the simple pleasure of being near. This partnership would prove to be one of the most consequential in all of natural history. As humans spread across the globe, dogs went with them. As human societies grew more complex, dogs adapted to fill new roles. From the frozen Arctic to the burning deserts, from the highest mountains to the smallest islands, wherever humans went, dogs followed. And in following, they became something more than animals. They became family. Let your mind rest now on these images of ancient partnership. The fire crackling in the darkness. The wolf dogs lying at the edge of the light, ears alert for danger, eyes soft with contentment. The human hands reaching out to stroke fur that is no longer wild. Two species, finding in each other something neither could find alone. This is where our story begins. This is the foundation upon which everything else will be built. In the chapters to come, we will follow dogs through the rise of agriculture and the birth of civilization. We will meet the dogs of ancient Egypt and Rome, the hunting hounds of medieval Europe, the working dogs that helped build nations. But all of that lies ahead. For now, rest in the knowledge that somewhere in the distant past, a wolf looked at a human, and a human looked back, and something magical began. As you settle deeper into comfort, let us travel forward through time. The great ice sheets have retreated. The mammoths have faded into memory. The world is warming, and humanity stands on the brink of its greatest transformation. Approximately 12,000 years ago, in a crescent-shaped region stretching from the eastern Mediterranean to the Persian Gulf, something remarkable began to happen. People started to plant seeds. The agricultural revolution, as historians call it, changed everything about human existence. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans had been nomads, following the seasons and the herds, never staying in one place for long. But with agriculture came permanence. Villages grew into towns. Towns grew into cities. Possessions accumulated. Populations exploded. And through all of this transformation, dogs were there, adapting alongside their human companions to a world neither species had ever known. The Fertile Crescent, that ancient cradle of civilization, was home to wild wheat and barley, to wild sheep and goats. As humans learned to cultivate crops and domesticate livestock, their relationship with dogs evolved in profound ways. The hunting companion of the Ice Age was about to become something far more diverse, far more specialized. The age of the working dog had begun. Imagine an early farming village, perhaps 10,000 years ago. Mud brick houses cluster together, surrounded by fields of golden grain. In pens near the village, sheep bleat and goats browse on dry grass. These animals represent wealth, security, survival through the winter months. They are precious beyond measure. And they are vulnerable. Wolves still roamed the wild lands beyond the village. Lions and leopards prowled the hills. Thieves from rival settlements might come in the night. The early farmers needed protection for their flocks, and they found it in their oldest allies. Dogs that had once helped hunt wild animals now turned their instincts toward guarding domesticated ones. The earliest livestock guardian dogs were probably not so different from the general-purpose dogs that had accompanied humans for millennia. But over generations, farmers would have noticed that some dogs were better at this work than others. Some were more alert, more protective, more willing to confront predators. These dogs would have been valued, bred, their puppies distributed to neighboring farms. Slowly, specialized types began to emerge. The livestock guardian dogs of the ancient world were large and powerful, bred to intimidate wolves and lions. They lived among the flocks from puppyhood, bonding with the sheep and goats they protected, coming to see them as family rather than prey. This was a remarkable transformation of the predator instinct, channeled and redirected through thousands of years of selective breeding. The wolf that had once hunted sheep now died defending them. But guarding was only half of the equation. As flocks grew larger and pastures more distant, farmers needed dogs that could do more than simply protect. They needed dogs that could move livestock, that could gather scattered animals and drive them where they needed to go. They needed herding dogs. Herding is a behavior that seems almost magical when you first witness it. A single dog, responding to whistles or hand signals from a distant shepherd, can control hundreds of sheep with precision and grace. The dog crouches low, moving in wide arcs, using its intense gaze, called the eye, to pressure the flock into movement. It anticipates where the sheep will try to escape and cuts them off. It works with an intelligence and focus that seems almost supernatural. This behavior is a modified form of hunting. When wolves hunt, they stalk their prey, they circle, they drive animals toward other pack members. Herding dogs do the same thing, but with the killing instinct suppressed. They experience the thrill of the chase, the satisfaction of control, without the final strike. It is hunting transformed into partnership, predation made gentle and purposeful. The development of herding dogs allowed single shepherds to manage flocks that would have required many people to control. This efficiency was revolutionary. It freed human labor for other tasks. It allowed flocks to grow larger. It enabled pastoralism to spread into marginal lands where agriculture was difficult. The herding dog was not just a helper. It was an enabler of entire ways of life. Let your mind drift now to an ancient village, perhaps 8,000 or 9,000 years ago. The sun is setting over a cluster of homes made from mud and timber. Smoke rises from cooking fires. Children play in the dusty lanes between houses. And everywhere there are dogs. Dogs in the early agricultural villages filled many roles beyond herding and guarding livestock. They were still hunters, accompanying men into the forests and marshes in pursuit of deer and wild boar. They were watchdogs, alerting the community to approaching strangers. They were companions for the elderly, playmates for children, warm bodies on cold nights. Archaeological sites from this period reveal the intimate presence of dogs in daily life. Their bones are found in garbage heaps, suggesting they were fed scraps from human meals. Their teeth marks appear on discarded bones, showing they scavenged what humans did not want. Their paw prints are preserved in ancient clay floors, captured for eternity in a moment of ordinary life. At the remarkable site of Catalhoyuk, in what is now Turkey, archaeologists discovered one of the world's earliest towns, inhabited from roughly 9,000 to 7,000 years ago. Among the many wonders of this site were the remains of dogs, carefully buried beneath the floors of homes. The people of Catalhoyuk, like those before them at Castle, treated their dogs with reverence in death, keeping them close even after life had ended. As human societies became more complex, so did their dogs. Different communities developed different types of dogs suited to their particular needs and environments. In the mountains, dogs grew thick coats to withstand the cold. In the deserts, they became lean and heat-tolerant. In the forests, they developed keen noses for tracking game through dense undergrowth. This was not yet the deliberate breed creation that would come thousands of years later, but it was the beginning of canine diversity. Dogs were becoming specialized, adapting to local conditions and local needs. The single type of proto-dog that had emerged from the wolf was branching into many forms, a tree of variety that would eventually produce the astonishing range of breeds we know today. In the cold northern regions, dogs were being bred for strength and endurance. These early sled dogs would become essential for human survival in the Arctic, pulling loads across the frozen tundra, enabling people to travel and trade in lands where no other transport was possible. Without dogs, human settlement of the far north would have been far more difficult, perhaps impossible. In other regions, dogs were becoming specialized hunters. Sight hounds, with their long legs and keen eyes, could chase down swift prey across open ground. Scent hounds, with their remarkable noses, could follow trails that were hours or even days old. Terriers, though they would not receive that name for millennia, were being bred small and fierce, perfect for pursuing rats and rabbits into their underground burrows. But perhaps the most important role dogs played in these early villages was the simplest one: companionship. Life in the ancient world was hard. Infant mortality was high. Disease was common. Violence was never far away. In such a world, the unconditional affection of a dog must have been a profound comfort. Dogs do not judge. They do not hold grudges. They do not care about social status or past failures. They offer their love freely, asking only for care in return. For people living difficult lives in uncertain times, this simple, reliable affection would have been enormously valuable. The dog by the fire was a constant in a world of change, a friend who would never betray, never abandon, never disappoint. Modern science has confirmed what ancient peoples must have known instinctively. Being with dogs is good for us. Studies show that petting a dog lowers blood pressure, reduces stress hormones, and increases levels of oxytocin, the same hormone that bonds mothers to their babies. The relationship between humans and dogs is not just cultural. It is biological. We are literally built to love each other. As you relax deeper into the story, imagine yourself in one of those ancient villages. The day's work is done. You sit by the fire, tired but content. At your feet lies a dog, its head on its paws, its eyes half closed. Every now and then, it sighs contentedly. Outside, the stars will overhead, the same stars that shine tonight. The world has changed beyond recognition since then, but this moment, this simple moment of peace between human and dog, would be perfectly recognizable to anyone who has ever loved a pet. As agricultural societies expanded, they took their dogs with them. The Neolithic Revolution spread from the Fertile Crescent into Europe, into Africa, into Asia. And everywhere it went, dogs went too. They were part of the package of domesticated plants and animals that transformed human existence. In Europe, the farmers who replaced or absorbed the old hunter-gatherer populations brought dogs that would become the ancestors of many modern European breeds. In Africa, dogs adapted to the tropical climate and became integral to the lives of herding peoples on the savannas. In Asia, dogs spread along the same routes as rice and millet cultivation, reaching China and eventually crossing to Japan and the islands of Southeast Asia. Perhaps most remarkably, dogs crossed to the Americas. This is one of the great mysteries of canine history. Genetic evidence suggests that the dogs of the pre-Columbian Americas were descended from East Asian dogs, brought across the Bering Land Bridge or by boat along the Pacific coast. These dogs arrived with the first human settlers of the Americas, perhaps 15,000 years ago, and they evolved in isolation from their Eurasian relatives for millennia. The dogs of ancient America were diverse and important. In the Arctic, they pulled sleds for the Inuit and their ancestors. In Mexico, they were companions and, in some cultures, food. In Peru, they hunted and guarded and were sometimes mummified alongside their human families. Wherever humans went in the Americas, from the frozen north to the tropical south, dogs were their companions. By roughly 5,000 years ago, the stage was set for the next great chapter in human and canine history. The agricultural villages had grown into something larger. In the river valleys of Mesopotamia and Egypt, in the Indus Valley and the Yellow River Basin, the first true civilizations were emerging. Cities with tens of thousands of inhabitants, temples reaching toward the heavens, writing that miraculous technology that would preserve human thoughts across the ages. And in these new civilizations, dogs would take on roles more elaborate and honored than ever before. They would become symbols of gods and guardians of the dead. They would be depicted in the first works of art, described in the first written texts, celebrated in the first literature. The humble companion of the Ice Age hunter was about to become something grander, a creature of myth and legend, of art and poetry, of kings and commoners alike. But that is a story for the next chapter. For now, rest in the peaceful image of a Neolithic village at twilight. The fires are lit. The flocks are safe in their pens. The dogs lie at their master's feet, their ancient bargain fulfilled for another day. Tomorrow will bring new labors, new challenges. But tonight, there is peace and warmth and the quiet breathing of faithful friends. Let your own breathing slow to match that rhythm. Feel the weight of the day lifting from your shoulders. Like those ancient dogs by the fire, you have earned your rest. The story will continue, carrying you gently through the ages, through the rise and fall of empires, through wars and wonders, through all the long centuries that separate those first villages from our modern world. But the thread that connects it all, the golden thread of friendship between human and dog, remains unbroken. Let your mind drift now to a land of rivers and reeds, of towering temples and bustling marketplaces. We have arrived in Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates, where human civilization as we know it truly began. Here, roughly 5,000 years ago, people invented writing, developed mathematics, created the first codes of law. And here, for the first time, they wrote about their dogs. The ancient Sumerians, who built the first cities in southern Mesopotamia, left behind thousands of clay tablets inscribed with wedge-shaped cuneiform writing. Among these tablets are records of dogs, their names, their roles, their importance in daily life. We find dogs mentioned in household inventories, in temple records, in the personal letters of merchants and officials. Dogs were everywhere in Sumerian society, as ubiquitous then as they are now. The Sumerians recognized several distinct types of dogs. There were hunting dogs, bred for speed and stamina. There were guard dogs, kept to protect homes and temples. There were herding dogs, working the flocks of sheep that were so central to the Mesopotamian economy. And there were what we might call lap dogs, small companions kept purely for the pleasure of their company. This diversity of types shows how thoroughly dogs had been integrated into every aspect of human life. Sumerian artwork depicts dogs with loving attention to detail. Cylinder seals, small carved stones used to mark property, often show hunting scenes with dogs pursuing deer or wild boar. Sculptures show dogs sitting attentively at their master's feet. One famous piece shows a dog looking up with an expression of devotion that any modern dog owner would instantly recognize. The bond between humans and dogs transcends the millennia. In Mesopotamian religion, dogs held a special place. The goddess Gula, also known as Ninasina, was one of the most important deities in the Sumerian and later Babylonian pantheons. She was the goddess of healing, the divine physician who could cure diseases and mend wounds, and her sacred animal was the dog. This association between dogs and healing may seem surprising at first, but it has deep roots. Dogs lick their wounds, and ancient peoples observed that dogs seemed to recover from injuries that would kill other animals. The saliva of dogs, we now know, does contain some antibacterial compounds. To ancient observers, the dog's ability to heal itself must have seemed almost magical. Temples dedicated to Gula often kept sacred dogs. Worshippers seeking healing would come to these temples and allow the dogs to lick their wounds or afflicted areas. It was believed that the goddess worked through her animals, channeling her healing power through their touch. Dog figurines were left as offerings, prayers for health inscribed on tablets buried beneath temple floors alongside carefully interred dog remains. At the ancient city of Isin, archaeologists discovered a remarkable sight, a cemetery containing the remains of dozens of dogs, carefully buried with offerings and ritual care. These were likely the sacred dogs of Gula's temple, honored in death as they had been in life. The goddess's faithful companions were laid to rest with the same reverence shown to human worshippers. Dogs in Mesopotamian belief also had a connection to the underworld, that shadowy realm beneath the earth where the dead were believed to dwell. This might seem contradictory to their association with healing, but in ancient thought, the two were closely related. The boundary between life and death, between health and illness, was thin and permeable. Dogs, who seemed to perceive things humans could not, were thought to be able to see across that boundary. Ancient texts describe dogs barking at invisible presences, warning their masters of supernatural dangers. Dogs were believed to be able to see demons and evil spirits that threatened human well-being. A dog's sudden agitation, its inexplicable growling at empty air, was taken as a sign that malevolent forces were near. In this way, dogs protected humans not only from physical threats but from spiritual ones as well. This belief in dogs as guardians against evil persisted throughout the ancient Near East and would later influence Greek and Roman traditions. The idea of the faithful hound standing watch at the gates between worlds, protecting the living from the dead and the dead from disturbance, is one of the oldest and most persistent themes in human mythology. It speaks to something deep in our relationship with dogs, a trust that goes beyond the merely physical. Now let us journey south and west, following the trade routes that connected ancient civilizations, until we reach the banks of the Great Nile River. Here, in the land of pyramids and pharaohs, dogs achieved a status perhaps unmatched anywhere else in the ancient world. In Egypt, dogs were not merely companions or workers. They were sacred, divine, worthy of the same elaborate burial rites accorded to human nobility. Egyptian civilization spanned more than 3,000 years, and throughout that immense stretch of time, dogs remained central to Egyptian life and religion. The earliest Egyptian artwork, dating back 5,000 years or more, already shows distinct types of dogs. There were elegant sight hounds with long legs and slender bodies, ancestors of modern Seleucus and Pharaoh hounds. There were heavier mastiff types used for guarding and warfare. There were small terrier-like dogs, kept as companions and hunters of vermin. The Egyptians gave their dogs names, and many of these names have survived in tomb inscriptions and on the collars buried with mummified dogs. Some names were descriptive: Blackie, reliable, good watcher. Others were more fanciful: she of the town, antelope, even useless. One dog was named Cooking Pot, for reasons we can only imagine. These names speak to us across the millennia, reminding us that the ancient Egyptians loved their dogs as individuals, with all their quirks and personalities. No discussion of dogs in Egypt can avoid the great god Anubis, one of the most important and recognizable deities in the Egyptian pantheon. Anubis was depicted with the body of a man and the head of a jackal or wild dog, his black coloring representing both the fertile soil of the Nile and the discoloration of mummified bodies. He was the god of embalming, the protector of the dead, the guide of souls through the underworld. The origins of Anubis are lost in the mists of pre-dynastic Egypt, but scholars believe his cult arose from observations of wild dogs and jackals in the desert cemeteries. These animals were often seen prowling among the tombs, drawn by the scent of burial offerings or inadequately protected remains. Rather than seeing these creatures as desecrators, the Egyptians came to view them as guardians, supernatural protectors of the necropolis. Anubis was believed to have invented the art of mummification, preserving the body of Osiris after that god was murdered by his brother Set. He guided the souls of the dead through the dangerous pathways of the underworld, protecting them from demons and monsters. In the final judgment, he supervised the weighing of the heart against the feather of truth, determining whether the deceased was worthy of eternal life. Temples to Anubis were found throughout Egypt, and priests wore jackal masks during funeral ceremonies, embodying the god as they performed the sacred rites of mummification. The association between dogs and death, between canines and the crossing to the afterlife, reached its fullest expression in Egyptian religion. Dogs were not merely companions for this life. They were guides to the next. The Egyptians mummified their dogs with the same care they showed to human family members. Archaeologists have discovered hundreds of thousands of mummified dogs at sites throughout Egypt, some buried in vast underground galleries, others interred in private tombs alongside their owners. The sheer number of these animal mummies speaks to the profound importance of dogs in Egyptian society. Some of these dogs were clearly beloved pets. Their mummies were carefully prepared, wrapped in fine linen, sometimes decorated with painted portraits or adorned with jewelry. They were placed in wooden coffins, some shaped like dogs, others inscribed with prayers for the animal's safe passage to the afterlife. The tombs of nobles often included special chambers for their dogs, ensuring that master and companion would be reunited in eternity. One particularly touching example comes from the tomb of a pharaoh's pet dog, buried with a limestone stela inscribed with the words, "The dog which was the guard of His Majesty." Odysseus was his name. His Majesty ordered that he be buried ceremonially, that he be given a coffin from the royal treasury, fine linen in great quantity, and incense. His Majesty did this for him in order that he might be honored before the great god Anubis. This inscription, dating to roughly 2280 BCE, is one of the oldest known records of an individual pet dog. Odysseus, whose name means something like with pointed ears, was so loved by his royal master that he received a burial fit for a nobleman. For 1,000 years later, we still remember his name, still honor the bond between this ancient pharaoh and his faithful hound. Beyond their religious significance, dogs served practical purposes in Egyptian daily life. Hunting was a favorite pastime of the Egyptian nobility, and dogs were essential companions in the chase. Tomb paintings show Egyptian hunters pursuing gazelles and lions across the desert, their lean sight hounds racing alongside chariots. In the papyrus marshes of the Nile Delta, dogs helped flush waterfowl for hunters armed with throwing sticks. These hunting scenes are some of the most beautiful examples of Egyptian art. The dogs are rendered with careful attention to their movement and form, their muscles straining as they run, their ears pricked forward in excitement. The artists clearly observed real dogs with great care and affection. These are not generic symbols but portraits of individuals, as distinct and alive as any modern photograph. Egyptian dogs also served as guards, protecting homes and temples from intruders. Police dogs patrolled the streets of Egyptian cities, and war dogs accompanied armies on campaign. But perhaps their most common role was simply as companions. Paintings and sculptures show dogs sitting beneath their masters' chairs at banquets, playing with children in gardens, curled up on beds and cushions in the comfortable chambers of the wealthy. As you drift deeper into relaxation, consider the remarkable continuity of the human-dog bond as expressed in ancient Egypt. The Egyptians who lived along the Nile 5,000 years ago faced challenges we can barely imagine. Their world was shaped by floods and droughts, by plagues and wars, by beliefs and customs utterly foreign to our modern sensibilities. And yet, when it came to their dogs, they were exactly like us. They gave their dogs names. They worried about their health. They mourned when they died. They wanted to believe that death was not the end, that somewhere beyond the veil, they would be reunited with their beloved companions. This hope, this faith in a love that transcends mortality, connects us to the ancient Egyptians more powerfully than any pyramid or temple. The great god Anubis still watches over the dead, at least in memory and art. His image gazes out from museum displays around the world, his pointed ears alert, his dark eyes filled with ancient wisdom. And in homes across the modern world, dogs lie at their master's feet, just as they did in the palaces of the pharaohs. Some things, it seems, are eternal. Let your mind rest now on the banks of the Nile, in the golden age of Egyptian civilization. The sun sets over the pyramids, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Palm trees sway gently in the evening breeze. Somewhere, a priest intones prayers to Anubis, commending another soul to his care. And in a humble house by the river, a dog sighs contentedly, its head on its master's lap, unaware that 4,000 years from now, someone will remember this moment of perfect peace. We leave now the sun-baked lands of Egypt and Mesopotamia and sail across the wine-dark sea to Greece, land of philosophers and poets, of democracy and drama. Here, among the olive groves and marble temples, dogs found a place of honor in one of history's most influential civilizations. The Greeks thought deeply about everything, including their relationship with their faithful canine companions. Greek literature is filled with dogs, from the earliest works that have survived to us. The Greeks wrote about dogs with affection and insight, recognizing their intelligence, their loyalty, their capacity for deep emotional bonds with humans. In doing so, they created some of the most enduring images of dogs in all of Western literature. The philosophers of ancient Greece debated the nature of animals and their relationship to humans. Aristotle, that great cataloger of the natural world, wrote extensively about dogs, noting their intelligence and their ability to be trained. He observed that dogs dream, twitching and whimpering in their sleep, and concluded that they must have imagination. Plato used the image of the well-trained dog as a model for the ideal guardian of his perfect city, praising the dog's combination of fierceness toward strangers and gentleness toward friends. Argos, the dog who waited. No story of dogs in ancient Greece can omit the tale of Argos, perhaps the most famous dog in all of classical literature. His story appears in Homer's Odyssey, that great epic of wandering and homecoming, composed nearly 3,000 years ago. It is a story that has moved readers to tears across all the centuries since. Odysseus, king of Ithaca, left his home to fight in the Trojan War. He was gone for 20 years, 10 years of war and 10 years of wandering, trying to find his way home across a sea filled with monsters and magic. During all those years, his faithful dog Argos waited for him. When Odysseus finally returned to Ithaca, he came in disguise, dressed as a beggar so that he could assess the situation before revealing himself. His own servants did not recognize him. His wife, after 20 years, was not certain, but Argos knew. Homer describes the scene with heartbreaking simplicity. Argos lay on a pile of dung outside the palace, neglected and infested with ticks, too old and weak to move. But when Odysseus walked past, the old dog lifted his head. His ears pricked up, His tail wagged, though he no longer had the strength to rise and greet his master. 20 years of waiting, and still he knew. Still he remembered. Odysseus, maintaining his disguise, could not acknowledge his old friend openly. A tear rolled down his cheek as he looked away, pretending not to notice. And Argos, having seen his master one last time, having fulfilled his long vigil, closed his eyes and died. His wait was over. His loyalty was complete. This brief episode, just a few lines in a vast epic, has resonated through Western culture for nearly 3 millennia. It captures something essential about the bond between humans and dogs. The constancy of canine love, the faithfulness that endures beyond all reason, the recognition that transcends time and change. Every dog owner who has ever returned home to a wagging tail knows exactly what Homer described. The Greeks were passionate hunters, and their dogs were essential partners in the chase. Greek literature describes several distinct types of hunting dogs, each bred for specific purposes. The Laconian hounds of Sparta were famous throughout the Greek world for their speed and endurance. The Molossian dogs of Epirus were large and powerful, ancestors of modern mastiffs, used for hunting large game and for war. Xenophon, the Athenian soldier and writer, composed an entire treatise on hunting with dogs. In it, he describes the ideal hunting dog in loving detail. Alert and joyful, with a light step and a waggling tail, keen to follow the scent, tireless in pursuit. He advises on how to train puppies, how to care for grown dogs, how to recognize quality in a hound. His affection for his dogs shines through every page. Greek art frequently depicts hunting scenes, with sleek hounds pursuing hares and deer across painted vases and carved reliefs. These dogs are shown with careful attention to their movement and form, their muscles tensed in the excitement of the chase. The artists clearly observed real dogs with great care, capturing their essence in clay and stone and paint. In Greek mythology, dogs guarded not only human homes but the realm of the dead itself. Cerberus, the hound of Hades, stood watch at the entrance to the underworld, preventing the living from entering and the dead from escaping. He was usually described as having 3 heads, though some accounts gave him 50 or even 100. His mane was made of serpents, and his bite was venomous. Despite his fearsome appearance, Cerberus was not evil. He was simply doing his job, maintaining the boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead. In this, he echoed the role of ordinary dogs throughout human history: the faithful guardian, the watchful protector, the one who keeps danger at bay. Even in the realm of death, the Greeks imagined a dog standing watch. The capture of Cerberus was one of the 12 labors of Heracles, the greatest of Greek heroes. Rather than killing the beast, Heracles was required to bring him to the surface alive, a task that required strength and courage in equal measure. In some versions of the myth, Heracles succeeded through force. In others, he won Cerberus over with kindness. The image of the hero leading the 3-headed dog was one of the most popular subjects in Greek art. From the graceful temples of Greece, we travel now to Rome, that great empire that at its height stretched from Britain to Babylon, from the Rhine to the Sahara. The Romans were practical people, engineers and administrators, conquerors and lawmakers. They adopted much from Greek culture, including Greek attitudes toward dogs, but they added their own distinctly Roman touches. In Roman cities, dogs were everywhere. They guarded homes and shops, barking warnings at approaching strangers. They ran through the streets, sometimes in packs that worried the authorities. They lounged in the courtyards of wealthy villas, pampered pets of patrician families. The Latin word for dog, canis, has given us many English words: canine, kennel, canary. The dog was woven into the very language of Rome. One of the most famous images from ancient Rome is the mosaic inscription Cave Canem, meaning beware of the dog. These warnings were placed at the entrances of Roman homes, sometimes accompanied by vivid images of fierce guard dogs, teeth bared in warning. Archaeologists have found many such mosaics at Pompeii, that city frozen in time by the eruption of Vesuvius in 79 CE. The dogs of Pompeii, preserved in volcanic ash, tell us much about Roman canine life. When Mount Vesuvius erupted on that August day nearly 2,000 years ago, It buried the thriving city of Pompeii under meters of ash and pumice. The disaster was a tragedy for the thousands who died, but it created an unparalleled time capsule of Roman life. Among the many poignant discoveries at Pompeii were the remains of dogs, preserved at the moment of death. One of the most heart-wrenching finds was a dog still wearing its bronze collar, its body twisted in agony as it tried to escape the choking ash. Analysis of its skeleton showed it was well-fed and cared for, a beloved pet rather than a stray. Near its body, archaeologists found the remains of a child, and they have speculated that the dog may have been trying to protect its young master in those final, terrible moments. The houses of Pompeii reveal the central place dogs held in Roman domestic life. Paintings show dogs playing in gardens, dogs begging at banquet tables, dogs curled up on cushions. One famous mosaic depicts a dog so realistically that you almost expect it to move, its chain trailing across the floor, its eyes alert and watchful. These images speak to us across 2 millennia, reminding us that the Romans loved their dogs just as we love ours. The Romans, consummate warriors, made extensive use of dogs in their military campaigns. War dogs, usually large breeds like the Malachian, accompanied the legions across Europe, Africa, and Asia. They were trained to attack enemy soldiers, to guard camps, to track down fugitives and escaped prisoners. Ancient accounts describe dogs wearing spiked collars and armor, terrifying weapons of war. But dogs served the Roman military in gentler capacities as well. They were companions to soldiers far from home, providing comfort and companionship during long campaigns. They guarded supply lines and warned of approaching enemies. Some legions adopted dogs as mascots, symbols of unit pride that accompanied the troops wherever they marched. The Romans also used dogs for hunting, both for sport and for practical purposes. Wild boar, deer, and hares were all pursued with dogs specially bred for the purpose. Wealthy Romans maintained elaborate kennels, employing trained handlers to care for their hounds. The hunt was a social occasion, a way for the elite to display their wealth and status, and fine hunting dogs were valued accordingly. Roman emperors, like monarchs throughout history, often kept beloved dogs as companions. The Emperor Augustus was said to be particularly fond of dogs and kept several as pets. Hadrian, that most cultured of emperors, built elaborate tombs for his favorite dogs when they died, honoring them with inscriptions praising their loyalty and affection. Roman literature contains many touching accounts of the bond between humans and dogs. The poet Martial wrote epigrams about his dog Isa, praising her beauty and intelligence in terms usually reserved for human lovers. He describes how she wakes her master with kisses, how she begs prettily for treats, how she has never soiled the house. His love for this small dog shines through the formal Latin verses. Pliny the Elder, in his encyclopedic natural history, devoted considerable space to dogs, cataloging their various types and uses. He writes of their faithfulness with evident admiration, noting that dogs alone among animals recognize their own names and come when called. He records stories of dogs who died of grief when their masters perished, dogs who defended their masters' bodies from wild animals, dogs whose loyalty exceeded that of any human friend. As the Roman Empire gradually declined and transformed over the centuries, dogs remained constant companions to its people. In the eastern half of the empire, which survived as Byzantium for another 1,000 years, dogs continued to guard homes and hunt game and warm the beds of emperors. In the West, as Roman civilization fragmented into the kingdoms of medieval Europe, dogs went with the people into this new age. The legacy of Rome lived on in many ways, including in its dogs. The mastiffs that had guarded Roman villas became the great dogs of medieval castles. The hunting hounds that had pursued boar through Italian forests became the ancestors of European hunting breeds. The small lapdogs that had warmed the laps of Roman matrons became the companions of medieval ladies. As you drift deeper into rest, let your mind linger in the ancient world. We have traveled from the first campfires of the Ice Age to the fall of Rome, a journey of tens of thousands of years. Through all those millennia, dogs have been beside us, changing as we changed, adapting as we adapted, but always remaining faithful. The world of Greece and Rome may be gone, but the bond they celebrated endures. The philosopher's hound, the emperor's pet, the soldier's companion, the household guardian. All these dogs have faded into history, but their descendants are with us still, lying at our feet as we sleep, dreaming their dog dreams of ancient chases and primordial fires. The thread is unbroken. The story continues. As you settle deeper into rest, let us journey forward through time once more. The great Roman Empire has faded, its roads crumbling, its cities shrinking, its legions scattered to the winds. In its place, a new world is emerging across Europe, the world of castles and cathedrals, of knights and peasants, of feudal lords and sacred monasteries. We have entered the Middle Ages, and dogs are about to assume roles more elaborate and honored than ever before. The medieval period, stretching roughly from the 5th to the 15th century, was a time of profound transformation. New kingdoms rose from the ruins of Rome. Christianity spread across Europe, reshaping beliefs and customs. The feudal system organized society into rigid hierarchies of lords and vassals, nobles and serfs. And throughout this tumultuous era, dogs remained essential companions to people at every level of society. For the nobility of medieval Europe, no pursuit was more prestigious than the hunt. Hunting was not merely a pastime. It was a social ritual, a display of wealth and power, a training ground for war. And at the heart of the medieval hunt were the dogs, bred and trained to extraordinary standards, valued more highly than many human servants. Medieval nobles maintained vast kennels filled with specialized hunting dogs. The most prestigious were the great hounds, used for hunting deer and wild boar. These dogs were tall and powerful, bred for stamina and courage. They hunted in packs, sometimes numbering in the dozens, their baying voices echoing through the forests as they pursued their quarry. The running hound, ancestor of modern foxhounds and beagles, was bred to follow scent trails for hours on end. These dogs had remarkable noses, capable of detecting traces of an animal's passage long after it had fled. They worked together with almost military precision, communicating through their voices, each dog's cry carrying information about what it had found and where the trail led. The greyhound, already ancient by medieval times, was prized for coursing, a form of hunting that relied on sight rather than scent. These elegant dogs, with their deep chests and long legs, could reach astonishing speeds in pursuit of hares and deer. Greyhounds were so valued that laws restricted their ownership to the nobility. A commoner found keeping a greyhound could face severe punishment. The Alauns and Mastiffs were the heavy infantry of the medieval hunt. These massive dogs were used for hunting the most dangerous game, wild boar and bear. They were bred for ferocity and fearlessness, willing to grapple with animals that could easily kill them. A good boar hound was worth a small fortune, and the loss of one in the hunt was a matter of genuine grief for its noble owner. The kennels of medieval kings and great lords were elaborate establishments, employing dozens of specialized servants. The master of the hunt was a position of great honor, responsible for the care and training of the royal dogs. Beneath him served feeders, who prepared the dogs' meals, valets who groomed and exercised them, and burners who handled the packs during the hunt itself. The dogs lived in heated buildings, slept on straw beds that were changed regularly, and ate better than many peasants. Their diets were carefully controlled, with different foods prescribed for different stages of training and different seasons of the year. Sick dogs were treated by specialized veterinarians, and pregnant bitches were given special care to ensure healthy litters. Medieval hunting manuals, beautifully illustrated manuscripts that have survived to our time, describe the care of dogs in extraordinary detail. They prescribe remedies for various canine ailments, from mange to broken bones. They explain how to train puppies, how to correct bad habits, how to maintain a dog's enthusiasm for the hunt. These texts reveal a sophisticated understanding of canine psychology and physiology. Picture a medieval hunt on a crisp autumn morning. The lord and his guests gather in the castle courtyard, mounted on fine horses, dressed in their hunting clothes. The kennelmen bring out the hounds, dozens of them, their excited yapping filling the air. Horns sound, and the procession moves into the forest. The hunt begins with the limer, a specially trained hound kept on a leash, who finds the scent trail of suitable quarry. Once a deer or boar is located, the running hounds are released. Their voices rise in the distinctive music of the chase, each dog's cry blending into a chorus that carries for miles through the autumn woods. The hunters follow on horseback, guided by the sound of the hounds, crashing through underbrush, leaping streams, galloping across meadows. It is exhilarating and dangerous, a test of horsemanship and courage. When the quarry is finally brought to bay, surrounded by the baying pack, the Lord delivers the killing blow with sword or spear. The hunt is complete. Afterward, there is a ritual called the curie, in which the dogs are rewarded with portions of the kill. This ceremony reinforced the bond between hunter and hound, reminding the dogs that their efforts would always be recognized. The best dogs received the choicest morsels, and a hound that had distinguished itself might be singled out for special praise before the assembled company. While the great hounds pursued deer through the forests, other dogs lived very different lives within the castle walls. The medieval nobility kept smaller dogs as personal companions, creatures whose sole purpose was to provide comfort and affection to their owners. These were the ancestors of many modern toy breeds, and they were cherished with an intensity that sometimes scandalized outside observers. Ladies of the medieval court doted on their small dogs, carrying them in their arms, allowing them to sleep in their beds, feeding them delicacies from their own plates. These dogs appear in countless medieval paintings, nestled in the laps of noblewomen or peering out from beneath the hems of elaborate gowns. They were status symbols, certainly, but they were also genuine objects of affection. The medieval church sometimes criticized this devotion to dogs as excessive, a misdirection of love that should be reserved for God and family. Preachers complained about women who lavished more care on their dogs than on the poor. But such criticisms had little effect. The bond between humans and their companion dogs was too strong, too deeply rooted, to be broken by mere disapproval. Small dogs also served practical purposes. They were living hot water bottles, their warm bodies providing comfort on cold nights in drafty castles. They were believed to draw illness from their owners, absorbing disease through close contact. They were companions for children, playmates who could be trusted with even the youngest members of the household. In an era of high infant mortality, the comfort a dog could provide to a grieving family was no small thing. But dogs were not only companions of the wealthy. In the villages and farms of medieval Europe, dogs played essential roles in the lives of ordinary people. Sheepdogs and cattle dogs worked alongside shepherds and farmers, their skills passed down through generations of careful breeding. Guard dogs protected homesteads from thieves and predators. Terriers kept barns and granaries free of rats. The life of a peasant's dog was harder than that of a noble's pampered pet. Food was scarcer, shelter rougher, veterinary care non-existent. But the bond between a farmer and his working dog was no less real for being practical. These dogs were valued colleagues, partners in the daily struggle for survival. A good sheepdog could do the work of several human shepherds, and its loss was a genuine hardship for a farming family. Medieval law recognized the value of dogs and prescribed penalties for killing or stealing them. The worth of a dog varied according to its type and training. A trained hunting dog might be valued at the same price as a horse. A skilled sheepdog was worth several sheep. Even a common cur had legal value, and its unlawful killing required compensation to its owner. The medieval mind saw dogs as moral exemplars, symbols of virtues that humans should emulate. Loyalty was the quality most associated with dogs, and countless sermons and stories used canine faithfulness as a model for human devotion to God, Lord, and family. The dog who stayed by its master's grave, refusing food until it died, was a popular tale with many variations. Dogs appeared frequently in medieval art, often carrying symbolic meaning. A dog at the feet of a tomb effigy represented the deceased's faithfulness. Dogs in religious paintings might symbolize loyalty, vigilance, or the faithful believer following Christ. The famous Arnolfini portrait, painted in 1434, includes a small dog that scholars have interpreted as a symbol of fidelity in marriage. But dogs were not always viewed positively in medieval symbolism. The Bible contains several unflattering references to dogs, and medieval writers sometimes used dogs as symbols of greed, impurity, or faithlessness. A dog returning to its vomit was a common metaphor for the sinner who returns to his sins. This dual symbolism, dogs as both faithful companions and base creatures, reflected the complex relationship medieval people had with their canine friends. In the monasteries that dotted the medieval landscape, dogs served special purposes. The Great St. Bernard Hospice in the Swiss Alps kept massive dogs to rescue travelers lost in the snow. These dogs, ancestors of the modern St. Bernard breed, would search for victims of avalanches and blizzards, using their keen senses to locate people buried beneath the snow. The most famous of these rescue dogs was Barry, who lived at the hospice in the early 19th century and reportedly saved over 40 lives. But the tradition of rescue dogs at St. Bernard stretched back centuries, a testament to the monks' recognition that dogs could do what humans could not. In the trackless white wilderness of the high Alps, a dog's nose was worth more than any map or compass. Other monasteries kept dogs for more mundane purposes. Guard dogs protected monastery property. Herding dogs managed monastery flocks. Some monks kept dogs as personal companions, finding in canine friendship a comfort during the long hours of solitary contemplation. The rule of Saint Benedict, which governed most Western monasteries, did not specifically forbid dogs, and many religious houses found room for them within their walls. As you continue to relax and let your mind drift, consider how much dogs had become part of human society by the end of the medieval period. They were hunters and guardians, workers and companions. They lived in castles and cottages, in monasteries and marketplaces. They had their own place in law, in art, in religion, in the daily rhythms of medieval life. The medieval period was drawing to a close. New ideas were stirring, new technologies emerging. The Renaissance was about to dawn, bringing with it a transformation in how humans understood themselves and their world. And dogs, as always, would adapt to this new era, taking on new roles even as they continued to fulfill the old ones. But something had been established during the Middle Ages that would never change. Dogs were no longer merely useful. They were beloved. They were no longer merely animals. They were family. The emotional bond that had begun in the Ice Age had deepened and matured over the millennia, and by the end of the medieval period, it was unbreakable. Let your mind rest now in a medieval scene of peace. The castle is quiet, the hunt over for the day. In the great hall, a fire crackles, casting dancing shadows on tapestried walls. At the feet of a dozing lord, a hound sleeps, twitching occasionally as it dreams of the chase. In the kitchen below, a terrier keeps watch for rats. In the stable, a sheepdog curls among the straw, its day's work done. All is well. All is peaceful. The long partnership between human and dog continues, as it has for countless generations, as it will for countless more. The medieval night descends, and dogs and humans rest together, dreaming their separate dreams, sharing the same warmth. Let your mind drift forward now, past the Renaissance and the Age of Enlightenment, past revolutions in America and France, into a world transformed by steam and steel. We have arrived in the 19th century, the age of Queen Victoria, when Britain ruled an empire on which the sun never set and the modern world was being born. This was the era that would revolutionize not only human society but the very nature of dogs themselves. The Victorians were passionate about classification and improvement. They believed that through careful study and deliberate effort, everything could be made better. Machines, cities, people, and certainly animals. This impulse, combined with new scientific ideas about heredity and selection, would transform the casual breeding of dogs into a precise art form. Before the Victorian era, dogs were generally bred for function rather than form. A hunting dog was judged by how well it hunted, a herding dog by how well it herded. Appearance mattered less than performance. Dogs of the same general type might vary considerably in size, color, and shape. The concept of a pure breed, with strict standards defining exactly what a dog should look like, was still emerging. Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, published in 1859, had a profound impact on how people thought about breeding. Darwin himself used domestic dogs as examples of how selection could shape a species, pointing to the dramatic differences between breeds as evidence for the power of selective pressure. If humans could create such variety in just a few thousand years, imagine what nature could do over millions. In 1859, the same year Darwin published his revolutionary book, the first modern dog show was held in Newcastle, England. It was a modest affair, featuring only pointers and setters, but it marked the beginning of something new. For the first time, dogs were being judged not on their working ability but on how closely they matched an ideal standard of appearance. Dog shows spread rapidly across Britain and soon to America and Europe. They became fashionable events, drawing crowds of spectators and intense competition among breeders. Winners gained prestige and their puppies commanded premium prices. The incentive to breed dogs that conformed to show standards became powerful, reshaping breed after breed to match the judges' ideals. The Kennel Club was founded in Britain in 1873, establishing itself as the official registry and arbiter of purebred dogs. It created stud books to track pedigrees, ensuring that only dogs with documented ancestry could be registered. It established breed standards, detailed written descriptions of the ideal specimen of each breed, and it organized shows where dogs could compete for championships. The American Kennel Club followed in 1884, and similar organizations were established across the world. These clubs brought order to the world of purebred dogs, creating systems that persist to this day. A dog registered with a kennel club had a verified pedigree, a documented lineage stretching back generations. This pedigree was a guarantee of purity, a certificate of authenticity in an increasingly commercial world. The Victorian era saw an explosion of new breeds, or rather, the formalization of old types into defined breeds with written standards. Dogs that had existed for centuries as general working types were refined and standardized. Regional varieties were combined or separated. New breeds were created through deliberate crossing and selection. Consider the bulldog. In the early 19th century, bulldogs were athletic, functional animals used for the bloody sport of bullbaiting. When that cruel practice was banned in 1835, the bulldog might have disappeared. Instead, breeders transformed it, selecting for exaggerated features: a flatter face, a more massive head, shorter legs. The modern bulldog, beloved companion though it is, can barely breathe or reproduce without human assistance. Or consider the German Shepherd, created in the late 19th century by a German cavalry officer named Max von Stephanitz. He set out deliberately to create the perfect working dog, combining the best traits of various German herding dogs into a single standardized breed. His creation would become one of the most versatile and popular breeds in the world, serving as police dogs, military dogs, guide dogs, and family companions. Some Victorian breeding projects seem almost whimsical. The Pomeranian, once a medium-sized Spitz-type dog, was bred down to toy size because Queen Victoria fell in love with a small specimen and made tiny Pomeranians fashionable. The Cavalier King Charles Spaniel was recreated in the 20th century to match dogs seen in old paintings, because breeders felt the modern King Charles had strayed too far from the historical type. While the Victorian dog fancy flourished in Britain, dogs were playing crucial roles in the expansion and development of other lands. In America, dogs helped settlers push westward across a vast continent. They guarded homesteads on the frontier, herded cattle on the great ranches of the West, pulled sleds through the frozen wilderness of Alaska. The American frontier produced its own distinctive breeds. The American foxhound was developed from English imports to hunt the different game of the New World. The coonhound evolved to track raccoons through the forests of the South. The blue Lacey, named for the family that developed it, became the working dog of Texas ranchers. These breeds reflected American needs and American conditions, as different from their European ancestors as America was from Europe. In Australia, another frontier society was developing its own canine companions. The Australian cattle dog was created by crossing European herding dogs with dingoes, producing a tough, intelligent breed perfectly suited to the harsh conditions of the outback. The Australian Shepherd, despite its name, was actually developed in America from dogs that had passed through Australia with Basque Shepherds. The great European empires of the 19th century spread dogs around the globe along with their flags and their commerce. British colonial officers brought their beloved breeds to India, Africa, and the Far East. They encountered native dogs in these lands and sometimes brought them back to Europe, introducing exotic breeds to Western audiences. The Pekingese came to Britain as war loot, captured from the Chinese imperial palace during the sacking of the Summer Palace in 1860. These dogs, which had been forbidden to commoners in China on pain of death, became fashionable pets of British aristocrats. Their flat faces and luxurious coats captivated Victorian dog fanciers, and they remain popular to this day. From Japan came the Akita, originally bred for hunting large game in the snowy mountains of northern Honshu. From Tibet came the Lhasa Apso, ancient watchdogs of Buddhist monasteries. From Africa came the Basenji, the barkless dog that had been depicted in Egyptian tombs thousands of years earlier. The world's dogs were being catalogued and collected, their diversity revealed to an increasingly connected world. Even as dog shows celebrated appearance over function, working dogs continued to earn their keep through their skills. The late 19th and early 20th centuries saw new applications for canine abilities. Police forces began using dogs for tracking criminals and controlling crowds. The German military developed systematic programs for training dogs for war, a practice that would prove its value in the conflicts to come. Guide dogs for the blind were first trained systematically in Germany after World War I, helping soldiers who had lost their sight to poisonous gas. This innovation spread to other countries, and soon guide dogs were helping blind people around the world. The German Shepherd, with its intelligence and trainability, became the most common guide dog breed, though others would follow. In the far north, sled dogs remained essential for transportation in regions where no other method could function. The famous Serum Run to Nome in 1925 demonstrated this dramatically. When a diphtheria epidemic threatened the isolated Alaskan town, dog sled teams relayed life-saving medicine across hundreds of miles of frozen wilderness. Balto, the lead dog of the final team, became a national hero, his statue still standing in New York's Central Park. Perhaps the most significant development of the Victorian era was the rise of the dog as a pure companion, kept not for any practical purpose but simply for the joy of its company. As cities grew and middle-class prosperity spread, more and more people had the resources to keep dogs that did no work, dogs whose only job was to be loved. The Victorian home idealized domestic comfort, and what could be more comforting than a dog by the fire? Books and paintings of the era frequently depicted happy families with their canine companions. Dogs appeared in sentimental stories and poems, celebrated for their loyalty and unconditional love. The dog had completed its journey from wolf to worker to friend. Queen Victoria herself was a great lover of dogs and kept many throughout her long reign. Her influence on dog breeding was considerable. Her preference for particular breeds made them fashionable among her subjects. When she acquired a collie named Sharp, the breed's popularity soared. Her Pomeranians sparked a craze for the tiny Spitz dogs that lasted for decades. By the dawn of the 20th century, the modern relationship between humans and dogs was fully established. Dogs were family members, their welfare a matter of genuine concern, their loss a cause for real grief. The pet industry was beginning to emerge, with commercial dog foods, veterinary practices, and retail shops catering to dog owners. The world we know today was taking shape. As you rest in gentle comfort, consider the remarkable transformation we have witnessed. In the space of just a few generations, dogs went from working animals with functional variations to pedigreed pets with documented ancestry. The informal breeding of farm and field gave way to the precise standards of the show ring. The mongrel at the cottage door made room for the purebred in the parlor. This transformation had its costs. Some breeds were pushed to extremes that compromised their health. The closed gene pools of purebred dogs concentrated harmful genetic mutations. The focus on appearance sometimes overshadowed the temperament and working ability that had made breeds valuable in the first place. These problems would become more apparent as the 20th century progressed. But the Victorian era also brought real benefits. It created systems for tracking and managing canine health. It preserved breeds that might otherwise have disappeared. It raised awareness of animal welfare and led to laws protecting dogs from cruelty. And it celebrated the human-dog bond in ways that enriched both species. Let your mind rest now in a Victorian evening scene. Gas lamps glow softly in a comfortable parlor. A family gathers around the fire, father reading his newspaper, mother working at her needlework, children playing quietly on the carpet. And there, at the center of the domestic scene, lies a dog, its head resting on its paws, its eyes half closed in contentment. This image, so familiar, so timeless, is the legacy of the Victorian age. As you continue to rest and let your thoughts drift, we must now journey through darker times. The 20th century brought wars of unprecedented scale, conflicts that engulfed the entire world and cost millions of lives. And through these terrible years, dogs served alongside humans with courage and devotion that earned them lasting honor. World War I, the Great War, saw dogs used in ways never before attempted. All the major powers employed war dogs, recognizing that canine abilities could save human lives and provide tactical advantages. Germany alone used over 30,000 dogs during the conflict, and other nations followed suit with their own canine corps. Messenger dogs carried vital communications across the deadly no-man's land between trenches, running through artillery barrages and machine gun fire to deliver their pouches. They were smaller targets than human runners and faster across the shell-torn landscape. Many died in the performance of their duty, but their messages often got through when nothing else could. Sentry dogs guarded camps and trenches, their keen ears detecting approaching enemies long before human sentries could. Their warnings saved countless lives, alerting soldiers to raids and infiltrations. In the nerve-wracking darkness of the front lines, a trusted dog at one side was a comfort beyond measure. Perhaps most touching were the mercy dogs, trained to find wounded soldiers on the battlefield. These dogs carried medical supplies on their backs and would search through the carnage for men who still lived. When they found a wounded soldier, they would lie beside him, offering warmth and comfort, or return to their handlers to lead rescue parties to the injured. How many men owed their lives to these gentle searchers we will never know. World War II expanded the use of military dogs even further. Dogs served on every front, in every theater of the conflict. They parachuted behind enemy lines with special forces. They detected mines that would have killed human engineers. They stood guard over prisoners and installations. They provided an irreplaceable service that no machine could match. In Britain, dogs played a crucial role during the Blitz, the German bombing campaign that devastated British cities. Rescue dogs searched through the rubble of bombed buildings, finding survivors trapped beneath tons of debris. Their sensitive noses could detect humans sent through layers of brick and concrete, locating victims who would otherwise have died unnoticed. One famous British war dog was a German shepherd named Jet, who served with the civil defense during the Blitz. Jet located over 100 air raid victims buried in the rubble of London's buildings. He worked tirelessly through the dangerous aftermath of bombing raids, crawling into unstable wreckage to find the living. For his service, he received the Dickin Medal, often called the Animal Victoria Cross, the highest honor a British animal can receive. In the Pacific Theater, dogs proved invaluable in jungle warfare. The dense vegetation that concealed Japanese positions could not hide them from a dog's nose. Marine war dogs, mostly Doberman pinschers, served as scouts and sentries on islands across the Pacific. They detected ambushes, located enemy positions, and warned of attacks, saving hundreds of American lives. Chips, a mixed-breed dog serving with the American forces in Europe and North Africa, became one of the most decorated war dogs in American history. During the invasion of Sicily, Chips broke away from his handler and attacked an enemy machine gun nest, forcing the Italian soldiers to surrender. He was wounded in the assault but recovered to serve through the rest of the war. While some dogs went to war, others served by staying home. In Britain, the government initially encouraged people to have their pets destroyed, fearing that food shortages would make keeping dogs impossible. Hundreds of thousands of dogs and cats were euthanized in the first weeks of the war, a tragedy that haunted many families for years afterward. But many people refused to give up their dogs, and as the war continued, attitudes changed. Dogs provided crucial emotional support during the long years of conflict. They were constants in a world turned upside down, sources of normalcy and comfort when everything else had changed. A dog waiting at home was something to survive for, a reason to hope for tomorrow. When the war finally ended, the bonds between military dogs and their handlers presented difficult questions. Many soldiers had grown deeply attached to dogs they had served with, and the thought of leaving them behind was unbearable. Some dogs were retrained for civilian life and returned with their handlers. Others remained in military service. Too many were left behind or destroyed, a sad end for faithful companions. The second half of the 20th century brought remarkable expansions in how dogs served humanity. Building on the foundation laid by guide dogs for the blind, trainers discovered that dogs could assist people with many different kinds of disabilities. The service dog revolution had begun, and it would transform millions of lives. Hearing dogs were trained to alert deaf people to important sounds: doorbells, alarm clocks, crying babies, fire alarms. These dogs gave their owners independence and security, providing ears when human ears could not function. A deaf person with a hearing dog could live alone safely, confident that no important sound would go unnoticed. Mobility assistance dogs learned to help people in wheelchairs and those with physical disabilities. They could open doors, retrieve dropped items, pull wheelchairs, and provide stability for people who had difficulty walking. These dogs extended their owners' capabilities, making possible tasks that would otherwise require human assistance. Perhaps most remarkable were the medical alert dogs, trained to detect changes in their owners' bodies that signaled impending medical crises. Diabetic alert dogs could smell the subtle chemical changes that accompanied dangerous swings in blood sugar, warning their owners in time to take corrective action. Seizure alert dogs could sense oncoming epileptic episodes minutes before they occurred, giving their owners time to reach safety. How dogs accomplish these medical detections remains not fully understood. Their sense of smell is so far beyond ours that we can barely comprehend it. A dog's nose contains up to 300 million scent receptors, compared to about 6 million in humans. The part of their brain devoted to analyzing smells is proportionally 40 times larger than ours. They live in a world of scent that we can only imagine. Beyond their practical abilities, dogs proved to have remarkable therapeutic effects on human mental health. In the years following the Vietnam War, therapists began using dogs to help veterans suffering from what would come to be called post-traumatic stress disorder. The calming presence of a dog, its unconditional acceptance, its living warmth, helped traumatized people reconnect with the world. Therapy dogs began visiting hospitals, nursing homes, and schools. Their gentle presence comforted the sick, cheered the elderly, and calmed anxious children. Studies showed that petting a dog lowered blood pressure, reduced stress hormones, and increased levels of beneficial neurotransmitters. The ancient bond between human and dog was being validated by modern science. Psychiatric service dogs emerged to help people with severe mental health conditions. These dogs were trained to interrupt panic attacks, provide grounding during dissociative episodes, create physical barriers between their owners and others in crowded spaces. For people whose conditions made ordinary life nearly impossible, these dogs offered a path back to independence. The recognition of dogs' therapeutic value led to new applications in unexpected settings. Courtroom dogs accompanied traumatized witnesses, especially children, providing comfort during difficult testimony. Facility dogs lived in hospitals and rehabilitation centers, bringing joy to patients during long recoveries. Reading dogs helped struggling children practice literacy skills without judgment or criticism. The 20th century also saw the professionalization of police dog work. K9 units became standard parts of police forces around the world. Their dogs trained for patrol work, criminal apprehension, and detection. The German Shepherd remained the classic police dog, but Belgian Malinois, Dutch Shepherds, and other breeds proved equally capable. Detection dogs developed specialties their trainers could never have anticipated. Drug detection dogs became essential tools in the fight against narcotics trafficking. Explosive detection dogs guarded airports, government buildings, and major events. Arson dogs could identify accelerants at fire scenes. Cadaver dogs helped locate human remains in crime scenes and disasters. Conservation detection dogs emerged as valuable tools for wildlife protection. These dogs could locate endangered species for study, detect invasive species before they spread, find illegal wildlife products being smuggled across borders. Their noses served science as well as law enforcement, contributing to our understanding and protection of the natural world. Search and rescue dogs continued the noble tradition of the mercy dogs of World War I. When earthquakes struck, when buildings collapsed, when hikers went missing in the wilderness, these dogs were among the first responders. Their ability to locate survivors in conditions where human searchers were helpless saved countless lives around the world. As you relax deeper into comfort, consider how the role of dogs has expanded in modern times. Once valued primarily for hunting and herding, dogs now serve humanity in ways our ancestors could never have imagined. They guide the blind through crowded streets. They alert the deaf to ringing phones. They detect cancer in breath samples. They comfort the grieving and calm the anxious. This expansion of service has deepened the bond between humans and dogs. When a dog is not merely a pet but a lifeline, the relationship takes on profound significance. Service dog handlers speak of their dogs not as animals they own but as partners they depend upon. The trust between them must be absolute, the communication seamless. And yet, beneath all the specialized training and remarkable abilities, the essential relationship remains unchanged. A service dog is still a dog, with a dog's need for play and rest, for companionship and affection. The handler must provide these things just as any dog owner does. The partnership is built on the same foundation of mutual care that has connected humans and dogs for thousands of years. Let your mind rest now on an image of this modern partnership. A guide dog leads its handler through a busy street, navigating obstacles with calm expertise. A therapy dog lies quietly beside a hospital bed, its presence easing pain and loneliness. A search dog scrambles through rubble, seeking life amid destruction. These are the dogs of our time, worthy inheritors of a noble tradition. As you drift in peaceful comfort, let us explore something wonderful, what modern science has discovered about the bond between humans and dogs. For thousands of years, people knew that dogs were special, that the connection between our species was unique and profound. But only in recent decades have researchers begun to understand why. The story begins with a hormone called oxytocin, sometimes called the love hormone or the bonding hormone. Oxytocin is released in mothers when they nurse their babies, in lovers when they gaze into each other's eyes, in friends when they embrace. It creates feelings of warmth, trust, and connection. It is one of the chemical foundations of love. In 2015, Japanese researchers made a remarkable discovery. When humans and dogs gaze into each other's eyes, both species experience a surge of oxytocin. The longer the gaze, the higher the oxytocin levels in both human and dog. This same mechanism, this mutual hormone release through eye contact, is what bonds human mothers to their infants. Dogs have somehow tapped into one of our deepest biological systems for forming attachments. This does not happen with wolves, even wolves raised by humans from birth. The mutual gaze, the oxytocin feedback loop, is unique to dogs. Somewhere in the process of domestication, dogs evolved the ability to connect with us on this profound biochemical level. They became not just our companions but our family, recognized by our bodies as beings worthy of love. Dogs have also evolved remarkable abilities to read human emotions and intentions. Studies have shown that dogs can distinguish between happy and angry human faces, even in photographs of people they have never met. They respond differently to human laughter and crying, approaching people who are upset and offering comfort. When humans point at something, dogs instinctively look where we are pointing. This seems simple, but it is actually extraordinary. Even chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, struggle with this task. But dogs understand human gestures naturally, reading our body language with an ease that speaks to thousands of years of coevolution. Research has shown that dogs can smell human emotions. When we are afraid, we release different chemicals than when we are calm. Dogs can detect these changes and respond accordingly. They know when we are sad, when we are anxious, when we are happy. They read us in ways we are only beginning to understand, attending to signals we don't even know we're sending. Brain imaging studies have revealed that dogs process human voices in the same way humans do, using similar brain regions to decode emotional content. When a dog hears its owner's voice, its brain lights up in patterns remarkably similar to those seen in human brains hearing loved ones. We are, it seems, wired to understand each other. Genetic research has uncovered fascinating clues to dog domestication. Scientists have identified genes associated with friendliness in dogs, some of which are related to a human condition called Williams syndrome. People with Williams syndrome are exceptionally social and trusting, almost incapable of seeing strangers as threatening. Dogs may carry genetic variations that produce similar effects. The dog genome has been fully sequenced, revealing the genetic changes that separate dogs from wolves. Many of these changes affect brain development, stress responses, and social behavior. Dogs are not simply tame wolves. They are genetically distinct creatures, shaped by thousands of years of selection for traits that made them better companions to humans. Some researchers believe that dogs and humans co-evolved, each species shaping the other over millennia of partnership. Humans who worked well with dogs may have had survival advantages, passing on genes that made them better at understanding and communicating with canines. Dogs that understood humans better reproduced more successfully. We evolved together, becoming better partners with each passing generation. Science has also documented the many ways dogs improve human health. Dog owners have lower blood pressure, lower cholesterol, and reduced risk of heart disease. They are more likely to survive heart attacks and recover faster from illness. They report less loneliness, less depression, less anxiety. The simple presence of a dog makes humans healthier and happier. Children who grow up with dogs have stronger immune systems, fewer allergies, and lower rates of asthma. Exposure to dogs in early childhood seems to train the developing immune system, teaching it to tolerate harmless substances rather than overreacting to them. The hygiene hypothesis suggests that our modern, sanitized environments may be making us sick, and dogs may be part of the cure. For elderly people, dogs provide companionship that reduces the health risks of social isolation. Studies of nursing home residents show that regular contact with dogs improves mood, increases social interaction, and even reduces the need for medication. The simple act of stroking a dog activates healing systems throughout the body. All of this research confirms what dog lovers have always known in their hearts. Dogs are good for us. Not just emotionally good, but physically good, measurably good, scientifically good. The bond between human and dog is not just a cultural artifact or a sentimental notion. It is a biological reality, written in our hormones, our genes, our very physiology. As our journey nears its end, let us look at the world of dogs today. There are estimated to be nearly 1 billion dogs on Earth, living on every continent, in every climate, in every kind of human society. Some are pampered pets in wealthy homes. Some are working dogs on farms and ranches. Some are strays on city streets. But all of them, every single one, carry within them the legacy of that first wolf who chose to approach a human fire. The modern dog comes in astonishing variety. From the tiny Chihuahua to the massive Great Dane, from the hairless Zoloid Squintly to the profusely coated Commodore, dogs display more physical diversity than any other mammal species. Yet they are all one species, all capable of interbreeding, all descended from the same ancestral population of wolves that threw in their lot with humans so long ago. Today there are hundreds of recognized breeds, each with its own history, its own appearance, its own temperament. Kennel clubs around the world maintain registries and standards, organizing shows and trials that celebrate canine excellence. But the vast majority of dogs are not purebreds. They are mixed breeds, mutts, village dogs, their ancestry a complex tapestry woven from many threads. The dog's role in human society continues to evolve. In wealthy countries, dogs are increasingly treated as family members, their welfare a matter of genuine concern, their medical care approaching human standards. Dog-friendly workplaces, restaurants, and hotels cater to owners who cannot bear to leave their companions behind. The pet industry has grown into a multi-billion-dollar global enterprise. What does the future hold for dogs? In some ways, their prospects have never been better. Veterinary medicine continues to advance, offering treatments that would have seemed miraculous just decades ago. Understanding of canine nutrition, psychology, and welfare deepens each year. More people than ever recognize the value of dogs and are committed to their care. But challenges remain. Some breeds suffer from health problems caused by extreme breeding practices, their bodies distorted in pursuit of appearance at the cost of function. Puppy mills produce dogs in cruel conditions to meet demand for fashionable breeds. Shelters overflow with unwanted animals, and millions of dogs are euthanized each year for lack of homes. The future of dogs depends on the choices humans make. We can breed for health as well as appearance. We can adopt from shelters instead of buying from mills. We can commit to responsible ownership, providing our dogs with the care, training, and attention they deserve. The dogs have kept their side of the ancient bargain. It is up to us to keep ours. We have traveled far together, you and I, through the long history of dogs. We began in the Ice Age watching wolves approach ancient campfires. We saw dogs buried with honor in prehistoric graves. We met the sacred dogs of Egypt and Mesopotamia, the hunting hounds of Greece and Rome, the companions of medieval lords and Victorian families. We followed dogs through the horrors of war, where they served with courage and devotion. We watched them take on new roles as guides and healers, detection specialists, and therapy providers. We learned how science is finally beginning to understand the deep bond that connects our species, a bond written in our very genes and hormones. But this story has no ending, for it is still being written. Every time a child throws a ball for a puppy, every time an elderly person strokes a faithful companion, every time a service dog guides its handler safely through the world, a new chapter is added. The story of humans and dogs is the story of us, of who we are and who we choose to be. As sleep begins to claim you, let one last image form in your mind. Picture a dog, any dog, perhaps one you have known and loved, perhaps one you have only imagined. See it lying peacefully, its chest rising and falling with gentle breaths, its paws twitching occasionally as it dreams its dog dreams. What does it dream of? Chasing rabbits, perhaps, running through fields of tall grass. Or maybe it dreams of you, of the sound of your voice, the touch of your hand, the warmth of your presence. For 15,000 years or more, dogs have dreamed beside us. In caves and castles, in cottages and condominiums, they have shared our sleeping hours, their dreams running alongside ours through the long night. They have asked for so little and given so much. They have been our hunters and our herders, our guards and our guides, our helpers and our healers. But most of all, they have been our friends. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, know that somewhere a dog is also sleeping, dreaming dreams that we can only imagine. And in that shared surrender to the night, in that parallel journey through the land of dreams, humans and dogs are together still, as we have been since the beginning, as we will be until the end. The fire still burns. The wolf still watches from the edge of the light. And the invitation, extended so long ago, is accepted once again. Come closer, friend. Lie down by the fire. Rest now. You are home. Sleep well.